Playing video games is fun, but you know what's even more fun? Thinking about how you played them. Good times. It's nice to take a break to reflect on what you've played, and that's why game statistics are so cool. Now, I'm not talking about playtime logs or anything tracking your hours played, that's its own beast. I'm talking about when games keep track of stuff that happens in-game. It can be the number of games you've played, your total eliminations, the total distance you've walked, even the number of times you've drowned. Dude, just take swimming lessons at this point. Game statistics are always such a fascinating inclusion to games, and I want to talk about the various ways it's used. Call me Mr. Sheldon from middle school because we're talking numbers and percentages today. What do you mean he cheated on his wife? When thinking about game stats, single-player games probably aren't your first thought. However, you'd be surprised by how prevalent they've been. One of the earliest of these is Galaga. When you reach game over, you'll get to see your shot accuracy for the playthrough. Sure, that's nothing crazy, and it doesn't affect your score or anything, but it's just cool to have an extra stat to judge your playthrough by. It probably made for a good talking point back when it was the hottest game in the arcade. Say, champ, that's not a bad score for your first try. Never mind, I want you out of the house by morning. As video games evolved, there became more stats to track and even more ways to track them. Though the options available vary wildly from game to game. Where's my shot accuracy? The simplest stat is just number of thing you do goes up, such as Plants vs. Zombies tracking how many zombies you vegetated. Simple, but it's the presentation that makes it interesting. The more zombies you kill, the higher the pile of corpses grows. This visual made the game so much more appealing to a younger Colin. The fact that simply playing the game would grow that pile made it feel like I was constantly working towards something. Okay, I know that sounds as simple as just number goes up, but I swear there's more to it than that. I'm not just the kind to be entertained by any... Huh? Oh! Okay, fine, it is just a number that goes up, but I just found it cool that the higher it climbs, the more the background changes from sky to space. That's just fun. You can also compare your total to your friends. If I could. Not because I don't have any friends, it's just that, unlike me, they value their time. PvZ is merely the simplest example though. In fact, I was shocked to learn that Minecraft of all games has the most in-depth statistics I've ever seen. There's so much to sift through here. You can see how many blocks you've broken in place, down to each individual block type. You can see how far you've walked, fallen, swam, horsed, and hogged. You can learn how many deaths you faced at the hands of enemies, such as the infamously dangerous cow. There's just so much to go through. You could genuinely spend a good half hour just looking through it all. I would have loved to pour through this as a kid, which raises the question, why did I never know about it? Oh, that's right, I'm a freak. Minecraft stats are exclusive to the PC version, not the mobile version, not the console versions, and definitely not the 3DS version. What are you, stupid? Not only that, but the statistics are only included in the Java edition of the PC version, not the Bedrock edition that's more widely distributed. Now, what's the difference between them? Java Edition is the original version of the game for PC. There's noticeable changes in the game's while Java and Bedrock have different release dates. I'm just Java Edition supports Bedrock. I just want to know how many pigs I've saddled. On a less confusing note, Balatro. Ah, now that's more like it. Balatro is a roguelike where every playthrough is completely randomized, so being able to see actual stats accumulated through your hundreds of failed attempts, I don't know, there's just something fun about it. You get to see which cards you use the most throughout your playthroughs, as well as high scores, most played poker hands, and more. You can also use this menu to compare stats with your friends. Seeing the differences in how you both play the game can be eye-opening, and it can even lead to some healthy discussion and debate around the game. These stats can also give important insights into how you play the game. For instance, learning that out of all of these powerful tarot cards, you constantly pick the one that has a 3 in 4 chance of doing nothing. But that's because gambling is worth it. Disclaimer, this is a joke. You're always one spin closer to that big win. Wait, he might be onto something. Disclaimer, that's also a joke. Game stats aren't solely for ogling. Sometimes they can even unlock stuff. A lot of games will have achievements for reaching statistic milestones. Angry Birds awards them for smashing enough blocks, and the remake of Silent Hill 2 has them for actions like breaking windows. Oh sure, James gets a trophy, but I get community service. These are fun to earn, but at the end of the day, they don't unlock anything in the game itself. It's basically just giving you a certificate saying, "We're proud of you, champ." But then we have Super Mario Odyssey. Brace yourselves, troops, incoming Odyssey spoilers, this is what you've trained for! Odyssey rewards you with more than just a mark on a digital checklist. When you reach certain milestones, Toadette will reward you with a power moon, and a mark on a digital checklist. Okay, I could workshop that analogy. These milestones aren't based solely around the game's missions though. You'll be rewarded for simply jumping, walking distance, or throwing Cappy. I genuinely love when you're rewarded for doing actions that you'd already be doing. It means that no matter what's going on, you're always making some sort of progress, and that can make the game a little less frustrating. Sure, I may be lost and not know where to go, but at least I'm getting my jumps in. The development team behind Odyssey would then go on to include stats in their next game, Donkey Kong Bananza. Hold until you see the whites of their eyes! Bananza's main gameplay feature is its destructible environments. You can smash through almost everything in the game, whether you're digging for collectibles, destroying a boss's armor, or even just taking your anger out on Mother Nature. The destruction mechanics are so satisfying that I spent the first few minutes of my playthrough just smashing through the starting area, and it wasn't long before I got that fateful notification for destroying 10,000 cubic meters of rock. These are your Smashin' stats, which show how much of each material you've destroyed in an area. The coolest part of Smashin' stats is that it tracks everything you smash. Dirt, stone, mud, gold, wood, eggs, melon, oranges. Even fractonium, the material that these NPCs are made of. Each material has milestones for 10,000, 50,000, and 100,000 cubic meters, and smashing that much material will reward you with gold. Now, this isn't as neat as it could be because gold is comically abundant in this game, but hey, even a tiny reward is better than most games bother with. There's more to it than that though. This NPC named Smashin' Stone will reward you with bananas for reaching certain Smashin' stat milestones. Some of these require basic materials like stone, which you'll naturally earn just by playing the game, but others require material like thorns that can't be punched normally, forcing you to experiment with various methods of destroying them without getting hurt. Until the elephant transformation completely trivializes that, but hey, it was cool while it lasted. On paper, Smashin' Stat sounds amazing, but sadly in practice there's a few baffling choices that really sour the system. For instance, the gold rewards for Smashin' Stats cap at 100,000 cubic meters, but so does the actual tracker. Once you reach that final milestone, the game just stops updating your numbers. I was desperately hoping that beating the main story would unlock a big graph for every level in the game, but no. Nothing. Monkey see, but monkey don't. I'm bothered so much because this isn't just a fun bonus like Mario Odyssey. Smashing is the mechanic of Bananza, so it would be really nice if they just kept tracking everything. And hey, wait, Odyssey kept tracking your stats after reaching milestones. They've done it before, why would they not do that for their next game? Look, I have a lot of issues with how these are handled, but at the end of the day, I still love that they're here. It helps give that feeling of progression and reward, even if all you're doing is smashing through a bunch of sediment. And also, the constant encouragement of destruction is really funny when you consider the context of the story. That Void Kong made a mess of everything? Oh my god, that's horrifying. I'm so sorry. So stats in single player games are pretty fun. Good even. But let's be real, multiplayer stats are what get the most attention. There's two types of multiplayer games. Party multiplayer and competitive multiplayer. Since competitive games are based around skills and victories, they tend to display critical stats, your total wins, eliminations, and accuracy. Fortnite has an actual stats menu where you can see stuff like your average win rate and eliminations per game. Ah, silly Fortnite, they left a few zeros off my score. There we go. Yeah, this really shows how much I get carried in these games. If you really want to delve into your history, you can sort your stats by individual seasons, modes, and even the size of your team. That's really awesome. Sadly, there's no way to view the earliest seasons. I would have loved to see my stats from when I played in 2018 on my Switch and iPad, but no, Fortnite insists that history started in 2023. Even if it's not the most detailed list, the fact that it's even here at all still adds to the experience. It almost makes the game more fun, knowing that you have a history of past and present stats to browse. Who wouldn't want a stats menu for everyday life? Wait, what the fuck? Unlike competitive games, party games have a different goal. Being fun. Because of that, they tend to focus on the more interesting stats you've accumulated, even if it's not always the most useful. Minigame collections usually include play counts for each individual game, as a fun way to track your playing habits. In Nintendo Land, we can see just how much we preferred Luigi's Ghost Mansion over every other game, and in Clubhouse Games, we can see how much I prefer 4 in a row over other responsibilities. Shit, I forgot to pay my taxes. Other party games have more detailed stats. Ultimate Chicken Horse and Towerfall, for example, keeps track of individual wins and deaths for each character, as well as other miscellaneous things. Check it out, the Fetal Position Award. You can even get as specific as the number of deaths caused by each obstacle. Yep, that's not surprising. And who could forget Mario Party's post-game stats? The answer is me, I almost forgot to talk about them. The Mario Party games will track a bunch of different stats throughout a playthrough. The types of spaces you landed on, how many minigames you've won, the total distance you've traveled, and more. Then, once the final turn is up, the game will award bonus stars, where it randomly chooses a stat and awards a star to the player with the highest total. I love the chaotic unpredictability of bonus stars. You could get a star for winning minigames and being good at the game, or you could get one for just landing on unlucky spaces. It sounds completely unfair, and that's because it is, but that's what makes Mario Party so special. Even when you're suffering horrible luck, there's always the chance you could win just because you had the right stats. It's beautiful. And while we're here, I also love the graph that tracks everyone's total stars each turn, because you can always determine the exact moment someone lost a star. It's funny. That's all. But in terms of statistics, none of these games can even hold a candle to the most in-depth party game of all time. Duck Game. There's a whole bunch of silly details to unpack here. You can see your win rate and accuracy naturally, as well as your total deaths and kills. Of course, the usuals. But there's so many wacky stats. You can see your time spent on fire, the number of conversions, not that kind, and the number of mines stepped on? They're blinking red, how do you not notice that? It even tracks the number of times you've quacked with Duck Game's dedicated quack button. Admittedly, this causes the game to devolve into quack spamming, but who cares, it's funny. Duck Game stats are just so fun to sift through. So many different numbers ranging from actually useful to actually usefuler. Can anything else even compare? You can't quack in this game, so no. When it comes to in-depth game statistics, the Super Smash Bros. Series is the cream of the crop, the ham of the harvest, the prime rib of the pasture. I mean, every single match ends with an in-depth stats menu you can view. In the moment though, you'll mostly be mashing through it. You'll typically only view it when you want to verify Jesus Christ. But if you really want to dive into the vault, you can view the most expansive and enjoyable stats menu in gaming history. There are dozens of different stats that you can view for every single fighter. So not only can you view your most and least played characters, but even the obscure ones in between, like Olimar.
Any regrets, sir?
Yeah. 53 to be exact. Smash will assign fighter records to the nickname you use while playing, meaning that you can check the individual stats for you and your friends. I love flipping through everyone's stats. It's interesting to see how everyone's playstyles and character choices can be so different. If you want to get super specific, you can even see how long you've played as those characters in real time. 56 minutes of pure agony. You can see how many KOs each fighter has, but you can also narrow it down to specific types of moves, which can teach you a lot about the roster. Sometimes you'll be surprised and learn about that fighter's strengths, and other times it isn't surprising in the slightest. These stats aren't just for your current play sessions, of course. Because it tracks everything you've done since starting the game, it can almost act like a history book for your past. On my copy for Smash for Wii U, Darkpin and Little Mac are still high up because that's who me and my brother first chose as our mains. Sure, we eventually switched to other characters, but that initial moment in time is still captured in this graph. There's still some flaws in this system, but some are more understandable than others. For instance, the highest damage taken stat is cool in concept because it's a record of how long fighters could survive off one stock. But, then they added the stage builder. This stat means nothing now. There's also a disappointing lack of a taunt stat. Why? Wouldn't it be funny to see how many times you've taunted people and which character has done it the most? Why can Duck Game track every individual quack you make, but Smash Ultimate can't bring itself to care? You will never be him. For those who love to scrutinize our own stats, Smash Bros is our best friend. And that makes Mario Kart our mortal enemy. Mario Kart Wii was the first entry to showcase your play stats. The player profiles are represented as licenses, and just like real licenses, you can see how many other people you've hit. Obviously, it can track your total races played, but it's actually useful here because every character and vehicle can be unlocked through racing enough times. Only 1,600 more races to unlock Baby Daisy. Rise and grind, gamers! Mario Kart 7 doesn't really have much, and it doesn't have a stats menu either. The only metrics you can see are your coins collected and your online rankings. The online has been shut down for years. And then we get to Mario Kart 8's 10-year reign, where the stats menu somehow feels worse despite nothing changing. It's not bad, but it just feels lame when nothing was improved, and that just makes the flaws with it more apparent. See, my favorite racer is labeled as Wario, despite the fact that I permanently switched to Petey Piranha when he was released. Sure, that means Wario doesn't know I'm cheating on him yet, but it'd be nice to know at least how close they are. And that goes for the tracks too. The game says SNES Rainbow Road is my favorite track, but that's only because I played it a lot on time trials. And apparently if you do a quick reset, it still counts as a separate race. And look, if you're already tracking each racer and stage individually, why can't we just see it? Can't we get out of the status quo limbo that we've been stuck in for years? Oh god, that's not what I meant. Mario Kart World went back to basics by not including any sort of stats menu. Like, at all. There's not even a settings menu, Jesus. The game still tracks your stats at least, but the way they're displayed is, as the cool kids say nowadays, bad. You earn various stickers for milestones such as collecting coins, playing races, or traveling distance. So because of that, you can look through your recent stickers to get a general sense of where you are with those stats. So why can't we just see the exact number? Sure, we can still track our stats this way, but what point is there to hiding the specifics? And these rewards have a cap. Once you reach 30,000 coins or 500 races, etc., you won't get new stickers for future milestones. Why? Do we even know if the game still tracks the stats after this point? What if it stops after these milestones and even updating the game won't add them back? And why did they remove the favorite characters and stages? What do they gain from getting rid of that? How else am I supposed to prove my unwavering dedication to Cheep Cheep? This is just unacceptable, but it has Contour, so $80 well spent. Okay, let's end this talk off with a unique case. New Super Mario Bros. U. And New Super Luigi U. And New Super Mario. After beating the game, you'll gain access to this purple toad house hidden away on an island. Now, what could be possibly inside? You'll never guess. Turns out that this is Nabbit's house, where he's been tracking all sorts of info about your adventure. What a creep! Honestly, having the stats menu unlocked at the end of the game is such a fun idea. It almost acts as a way to reflect on your playthrough. The actual stats themselves are weird. There's the number of Goombas you've squashed. No other enemies though, so your true body count is unknown. Want to know how many lives you've lost? I bet you do. Here's all the times you've reached the goal with Yoshi. You can see how many synchronized ground pounds you've done with your teammates. I played this entire game by myself. Now, to be fair, this stat was added exclusively to the Switch port of the game. The original Wii U versions had a stat for distance traveled on boost blocks, which you could place in a level by tapping the gamepad. So since boost mode is mainly a multiplayer thing, you could argue that it makes sense for the replacement to be co-op focused. But you could still use it in single player if you use the gamepad. So why replace it with something you never do solo? Stupid. Maybe this all sounds too nitpicky, and yeah, it may seem that way. Game statistics. They're fun. Unimportant? Sure. Still fun to view? You bet. Now, I can understand why developers don't prioritize these. It doesn't seem that important, and I'm sure there's a lot of behind-the-scenes programming that goes into tracking this junk. But man, their inclusion not only shows how much the devs care, but also how much we care. Being able to delve through all of these numbers and learn about how we play, it can genuinely strengthen your love for a game. Let that be your takeaway from this talk. Now, let's get out there, have some fun, and rack up those stats. Oh, shit. They are easy to miss.